But if there are things that you think are so important to emphasize or are omitted, you can take some minutes to address this Senate, and then the questions, comments by senators will ensue. Once again, you are welcome. You can now make your presentation. You are welcome once more.
Of the Senate, Mr. President, the Deputy Senate President of the Senate, all the principal officers of the Senate, distinguished senators here, good morning. My name is Dr. Uchechukwu Ogah, representing or being nominated to represent Abia State by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And I believe that my CV is very comprehensive and detailed where necessary. So I want to say that I'm pleased to stand before the distinguished senators here to present myself to serve this great nation.
Senator Alero.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. Mr. Nominee, Dr. Uchechukwu Ogah, let me first of all congratulate you for being appointed as a nominee. And let me go straight ahead and ask my question. This administration has made it very clear that it will diversify the economy. I have seen that you are a seasoned banker. You were able to turn the fortune of a particular branch of Zenith Bank from zero up to about 9 billion naira by the time you left that particular branch. Our economy is a monocultural economy, and the only way we can reduce our dependence on oil is to diversify it by going into agriculture, solid minerals, and manufacturing. What, in your opinion, can the government do to succeed in the diversification of the Nigerian economy? And the second question I have is that there is massive unemployment in the country. It is very common to see university graduates roaming our streets that graduated over 5 years ago, and they're looking for employment, and there is none. If eventually you are confirmed as Minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, what would you do to generate employment for our teeming populace? Thank you, Mr. President. That's all I have.
Senator George Thompson Sekibo.
Mr. Chairman, my distinguished colleagues, I'm Senator George Thompson Sekibo. Mr. Nominee, I want to ask you maybe just one question. The question is the Nigerian budget versus the people. The population. Nigeria has a budget of 8.92 trillion. with a 200 million people about that. If we translate it versus the people, one person will get $124.6. UK has a budget of $1 trillion versus 67 million people. The person will get $15,000. And South Africa has $131 billion versus 58 million people. The person will get 2,263. What do we do to reverse this situation? What is it that other nations are doing right that you think as an accountant that we're not doing very well, so that we can also improve at least from $124 per person to a higher value? Simple question. Thank you very much.
Senator Ogah.
My name is Ogah, Boy Central. Let me start by congratulating the nominee. But my question is, looking at you as a very young man, knowing very well that the youth of this state, of this country, has been in a dilemma, can you tell us what you will do to improve the standard or the position of Nigerian youth? Thank you, Mr. President.
Doctor, you can respond to the questions, please.
Thank you. The first question talked about looking at the entire economy and creation of jobs. And for me, I believe that what we could do as a nation is to build on our critical infrastructure. Any nation that does not have infrastructure is deemed as a failed state. So by the time we increase our infrastructure, thereby creating jobs. And I believe that in creating jobs for our teeming population, the best thing we can do as a nation is there is nobody that can develop our nation only but us. So it is when we take interest in our nation, which is Nigeria, and looking at it holistically and how we can develop all the critical infrastructures. You have electricity, you have good roads, you have amenities. You know, we do not need to concentrate most of our industries in the urban areas. We need to create industrialization in most of the rural areas, thereby creating teeming population for the regions. For instance, when you talked about what can we do as a nation, I always pride myself. I said by 1966, the Eastern region was the fastest growing economy in the whole world. What did Dr. M.I. Opara did? He went to the University of Nigeria. He picked the best of the best, and he created endless orchards in all the ends of the Eastern region. And then we started exporting agricultural products. And by the 1966, in Exchequer in London, the Eastern region had the best balance in the account. What did they do? Endless orchards. We don't need to depend on only oil. Yes, oil is a cash cow, but I believe that if we develop our agriculture sector, we can equally develop, create jobs and for our teeming youth. Take for instance, if you build a farmland where you can house over 150 youth with housing, and you provide enabling accommodation for them, and you give them all the necessary amenities, I can tell you that this youth will be able to turn over the entire piece of land to something that will create revenue for the entire country. We as a nation can export and feed the entire world. We have the capacity, we have the population, we have all the resources that are required, which is the human capital, which is the best that is needed. So I believe that if we can do that, we can actually improve in this nation. When you talk about the Nigerian 8.9 economy, 8.932 trillion economy, basically, the government budget does not drive economy. If you look at the Nigerian as an economy, it's an economy of over 40 trillion. And you look at it, that is the private sector that is needed. We must empower and drive the private sector. And once the private sector is driven, it will make a turnaround. If you go to South Africa today, most of the major manufacturers have their industries in South Africa. What does that do? It creates jobs for the people, for the teeming youth. So we do not depend only on oil. So that will help us to change the scenario of Nigerian situation. When you say what can be done, you see, it's unfortunate that the whole of Africa came into existence as a result of the export of Africans to the Europe. If we as a nation can bring our youths and put them together and talk to them and train them. Take for instance, if you take a minimum of 100 youths to go to South Korea to learn how to manufacture just a common chips. Chips is done from the sand. And this is what South Korea does not have any oil. But today, you know who they are. So all we need is to develop our youth. We need to create an enabling environment where we can develop our youth and give them the opportunity so that they can leverage into the entire larger society of the world. So I think it's very, very important and necessary.
Thank you very much. Senator Barrow Jibril.
Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the opportunity to ask my question. Mr. Nominee, yesterday we debated about the state of our refineries in this country. We also talk about the inability of our oil and gas industrialists, which you are one. I'm asking you this because I can see in your resume that after your sojourn into the banking profession, when you came out of the banking profession, sector, you went into oil and gas, where you show here that you are a very big player in that sector. Now, why do you think our investors in the oil and gas sector, who were given licenses to set up modular refineries, and are unable to set up these modular refineries? What has been the problem? And what do you think, assuming the president, assuming we confirm you, and the president gives you the portfolio of petroleum minister, how do you think we can, maybe through incentive or through any means, we can propel these people to set up these modular refineries? How do you think we can do that? And what are the problems? What are the problems for us, and how do you think we can deal with this problem? And the government refineries that are lying idle without working, I learned that they can be resuscitated and even be expanded. What do you think you can do as a petroleum minister if you are given that portfolio? How do you think you can work to make sure that our refineries are up and running and even expanded? Thank you very much.
Senator Amos Bulus.
Mr. Chairman, sir, respected distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator B.K. Amos, representing the good people of Gombe South. Let me seize this opportunity to actually congratulate you for having been nominated to appear before this screening committee. I have just a very simple question that I want to ask. From your resume, as was rightly observed by someone, it appears you are a guru in the oil and gas industry, having been the president of Masters Energy Group. So I want to ask, supposing at the end of today, you become successful in the screening and you become minister for the oil petroleum industry, I want to ask, what can you do vis-a-vis the frequency at which we have petroleum or pipeline explosions in this country that has remained a recurrent decimal, whereby almost every day people lose their lives? What can you do to actually check this menace of pipeline explosions that becomes a household in Nigeria today? Thank you.
Senator Ibrahim Abdullah Gobir.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Nominee, I want to congratulate you for that nomination. But the first question I have is, if you find yourself in the Ministry of Trade and Investment, what kind of strategic method you are going to employ to ensure industrialization of Nigeria? Second question, do you think that Naira is undervalued or overvalued? And whichever answer you give, you should explain. Thank you, Your Excellency.
It is not clear with
Do you think the Naira is overvalued or undervalued? And whichever answer it is, you should explain. You can answer the questions now.
Thank you. Sir, one thing I've always said in this country is the will for us to do things for ourselves. And once we believe that these things belong to us, it's our collective resources, we will do everything to ensure that we make it succeed. When you talk about the modular refinery, sir, like I said, Masters Energy is given a license to operate a modular refinery, but we have not been able to operate because there are two major issues. One is the source of the crude, a guaranteed source of crude. And the second one is funding. And if you look at it, everything is based on legislation. And I believe that once the petroleum bill is passed, it will help the economy in ensuring that investors will come into the country, invest in such magnitude of, bring such magnitude investment into Nigeria, and once they have guaranteed crude, which can be used, because you know, it is like building a house and nobody comes in there. So it is very difficult for people to put their money when they know that there is no source of crude to use in operating their refineries. I can assure you that if given the opportunity, the refineries, the 3 refineries in Nigeria need to work. It is the willpower. When we say it's our own, convince ourselves that this thing must work. It must work. Because we've done it in the private sector, and I can tell you that it's something that is possible. Because you get people to do what you want to do. That is what leadership is all about. And I believe that once, as a leader, they see that you're on the right path, they will join you to put hands to make sure that it works. Our refineries can work because it's just a thing of the willpower in us. Then when you talk about...
Let me interject at this point. What do you mean that you need a guaranteed source of crude? Can you explain further what that means?
No guarantee that you'll be giving crude oil if you have a refinery.
Continue with your answer.
Thank you, sir. Why I'm saying is that because I'm an investor, so I know what I'm saying, sir. Then, on the issue of there is no country that allows its currency to be fixed. Every currency is usually being floated because most times, take for instance today, if you decide to deregulate the Nigerian petroleum sector, especially the downstream, it has to be, like I've always proposed, it must be a guided deregulation. A guided deregulation in the sense that you don't allow everybody to dump on us, because there will be an impact on our foreign exchange. Because the foreign exchange is dependent on demand and supply. The more the demand, the higher the price of your currency depreciates. So that is what happens. So we must guide our currency because it is what our ability to guide it is what either it goes up or it comes down. If we had in the past grown our foreign reserve, I can tell you maybe our currency wouldn't have gone the way it is today. But I believe that with currently what is going on, the Nigerian naira at the price which it is today is okay for the nation.
Order.
Senator Stella Ogah.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, my name is Senator Stella Ogah, and I represent Anambra North. My dear brother, I want to congratulate you for this nomination that you have. But I have concerns, and that is the fact that many people really don't know you. I've known you for a very long time, and I know your antecedents. And I know your antecedents. I know also where you have come from and where you are today. And I want to commend you. I want to say, Mr. President, that Dr. Ogah started an oil company from nothing, and today has grown into not just a household name, but a huge corporate that is international. Dr. Ogah is young, but has done very impressive things for his community. We talk about prosperity sharing, we talk about wealth sharing, and you have practicalized that. In your community, you domicile the industries. No, this is comment, and I'm coming to my question. And I do want to commend you because it's strange to have people imbibe and practicalize prosperity sharing, and you have done so. So my question is this, Mr. President, Dr. Ogah, when you get your portfolio, hopefully it should be oil and gas because that's where you have your wealth of experience. When you go there, with inconsistencies we'll be having in NNPC policies towards downstream operation, and you are an operator downstream. My young colleagues in my past world, how would you bring NNPC back to where it should be, to the extent that the policies become consistent and that investors will accomplish their said desire in the first place, i.e., in tank farms, many people that started with NNPC policy to build tank farms 10 years ago, 90% are off market because, again, the inconsistency in that policy has made it unattainable for them to be able to recoup their investments. How would you ensure that policies, downstream policies in particular, are standardized and they are in tandem with the global best practice. And people will have the attraction to invest in downstream. Because today, downstream investment by private sector is nearly zero. And we must have direct investment in NNPC, in downstream in particular, if we want to create jobs and make it a viable sector. And once again, I want to commend you. I think you're a right choice, one of the best choice, based on what I have seen so far. And I congratulate the government for being bold enough to nominate someone like you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Ezenwa Onyewuchi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, my name is Ezenwa Onyewuchi. I represent Imo East Senatorial District. Dr. Ogah, let me join my colleagues in congratulating you. And from your CV that I have here, you've been a major player in the oil and gas sector. When you spoke earlier, you said that the refineries must work. So let me share your thoughts on this. I don't know if you are encouraging government to invest more money in the turnaround maintenance, that not a few Nigerians consider drain pipe. So what do you think is the way out? Let me also share your thoughts equally on the issue of pipeline vandalism. You are a major player, and this is what is depleting our resources as a nation. Thank you very much.
Senator Adedayo Adeye.
Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the opportunity to ask my question. I join my colleagues. Well, my name is Senator Adedayo Adeye, representing the good people of Ekiti South, Ekiti State. All the people of Ekiti South are good. I congratulate you on your nomination as a ministerial nominee by the president. But I've just gone through your CV, sir, and I discovered that you were born in 1969. Am I right? But you finished your primary school in 1978. That will be that you finish within maybe 8 or 9 years, your primary school. Is that correct? You finished in 1978 because I can see your certificate here. And I know that as of the time you were in school, the general situation in this country was that you'll be about 6 years old before you begin to go to school. And the average time people normally finish school start. It could mean that you are a genius, really. I'm trying to establish whether you are a real genius, because I can see that you finished in 1978. But now going to my question, you are also a banker. You worked for many years in a bank and became an assistant general manager of a bank. Now I want to ask you, we know in this country that the banks don't lend to the small businesses, particularly the commercial banks. They find it difficult to lend to small businesses. They rather run even after politicians to give them unsolicited loans. And we know that without the growth in that sector, I mean the small business sector, there is no way this economy can. Order. What do you think we can do as an experienced banker, a person who has knowledge in that area, that will to encourage the commercial banks to begin to lend to the small businesses, such that, because the small businesses are the one employing the majority of the people, so that we can reduce youth unemployment and we can accelerate the growth of the economy. Thank you very much.
Senator Issa Jibrin.
the President of the Senate, distinguished colleagues. I am Isa Jibril, representing the very good people of Kogi East. My question is on the Treasury Single Account. TSA. You are my colleague banker, so I'm sure you know very well about TSA. You know that as a developing country, the government is supposed to be the major provider of funds for various activities in the economy, because the private sector is not well developed. You also know, like I do, because I was in the banking industry, that revenue collection activities by banks, collection of revenues by banks from various government agencies used to constitute a major source of fund for banks. Short-dated as such funds may be, they eventually translate to permanent source of funds. That I know, that you are very much aware. Now, with the implementation of the TSA, how are the banks faring? Don't you think there is a need to tinker with the TSA to provide succor to the banks, so that the banks can be properly placed to fund the economic activities in the country? Banks are being struggled, and I think the government needs to protect the banks. And I think revenue collection activities, like I did say earlier, which used to be a major source of funds, short-dated but long-tenured funds for banks, needs to be revisited. Secondly, Mr. President, sir, you are also aware, because we come from the same background, issue of import substitution strategy that was invoked some years ago was supposed to create opportunities for indigenous entrepreneurs. Many individuals, many entrepreneurs sunk money into many enterprises. But today, many of those enterprises are under receivership. Why? Because the companies have not been sufficiently protected. What do you think we should do about that? Do we need to revisit the import substitution strategy? Because a lot of jobs have been lost. Most of these companies are under receivership. What is your take on that? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
You can respond, please.
Thank you. Senator, my father was a teacher. My father was carrying me from one place to the other. By the time I was jumping classes, and in fact, when I went to secondary school, I was the smallest. And in fact, the principal never agreed that I should attend secondary school, because he said I was not due to attend. And then my grandmother had to swear, because, you know, in Igbo we believe in reincarnation. And my grandmother said, no, my mother must go to school. And because of that, the principal, you must accept. How much do you want I must pay so that my grandson must go to school? And that was what happened. I can tell you that, for me, I can't call myself a genius, but I can say that I operated a company, Masters Energy, within 10 years. Let me take it to banking. Within 10 years, you know, my brother as a banker, within 10 years in Zenith Bank, I became an assistant general manager. It's an unprecedented. And I was able to do it because of hard work, tenacity, and commitment. I operated Masters Energy Oil and Gas. Within 10 years, I was made a major marketer in the industry. So for me, I see it as a drive, because whatever I find myself to do, I must put in everything that is in me to make sure that it's a success. And that's what I have done. Then when you talk about small lending, yes, we know that, but I believe there are policies that are coming up recently. Those policies are policies that are creating lending for small-scale industries.
Order. Silence, please.
You talk about microfinance banks. You talk about development banks. These are banks that are being developed.
Distinguished colleagues, we have asked him questions. I think we need to listen to him in silence. Go ahead.
So there are other various means of lending other than the major bankers lending. But I believe that what you have said is the truth. And I believe that everything is based on legislation. And I believe that once there are laws protecting these industries or small micro industries, that for them to attract lending from the banks will be mandated. And I know there's a CBN policy that requires that a minimum portfolio should be lent to microcredit. The issue is that this lending, how are they being disbursed? Are they properly channeled to the right businesses where they can help to grow such businesses? That has to do with an oversight function that has to do with the Senate. Equally, when you talk about the TSA and funding activities, what you have said is true. And I can tell you that, yes, I left banking in 2007, but once a banker, you're always a banker. And like you said, all of us knew what happened at the introduction of the TSA. Almost collapsed most of the banks. But I believe that the CBN came up with a policy that helps to keep them alive. The reason why I believe the introduction of TSA is in one way good for the economy, because sometimes policies are done and it does not protect those policies. When they are done, they are not done for the interest of the general public. Because when you keep those monies, are they used for lending, or are they being given to the central bank as treasury bills? Those are the things you need to look at. But if you put the money in the bank and the money is not creating, because there's no creation of economic activities in the economy, so automatically the funds are lying idle. So, but I believe that the central bank created a cushion effect for when these monies were removed from the commercial banks, the monies were taken, CBN gave them a cushion effect so that they will be able to protect them from crashing. And that is what is holding most of the bank. And when you talked about
order, please, order. Order.
When Senator Stella talked about the downstream, the truth remains the fact that most investors in the downstream cannot recoup their investment as a result of epileptic policies in the downstream sector. And I believe that what this nation needs is that people who have experience, people who have been tested, people who knows what to do, they can bring in ideas. And based on those ideas, the Senate will come up with laws that will guide our downstream sector so that investment both in downstream and even in upstream can be protected. Not only downstream, every investment in Nigeria should be protected by law. And that is the responsibility of this House, to create laws to protect people's investment. And if given the opportunity, I believe that I will create opportunity to stabilize the policy that will ensure that investment in the industry is protected for the interest of the Nigerians, so that jobs can be created both in downstream, midstream, and the upstream. Thank you.
Distinguished Senator Aisha Dahiru Ahmed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Aisha Dahiru Ahmed. Aisha Binani, Senator representing Adamawa Central. I would like to use this opportunity to commend the
nominee in person of Dr. Uchechukwu Ogah. I would like to ask my question based on the summary of his career. As I can see that he said he's president of Masters Energy Group that deals with oil and gas industry. My question is, you suggested that 3 of our refineries should work. And Nigeria being the 12th largest oil producing country in the whole world, Nigeria being the 2nd in Africa with estimated of about 37.2 billion barrels of crude oil deposits, Nigeria being number 7 in the whole world in terms of gas with an estimate of about 187 trillion cubic feet, Nigeria still remaining the only OPEC member country depends on imported refined petroleum products after injecting about $1.6 billion in turnaround maintenance of refineries from the year 2000 till now. With what you have said, sir, are you still suggesting that more funds should be injected in the turnaround maintenance of those refineries to get them back on track? Or otherwise, if yes, how do you intend to assure, how will you assure this chamber that after injecting more funds, those refineries will get back on track? And if otherwise, how do we intend to get those refineries back on track? Thank you very much.
Senator Allen Dume.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, I've already discussed my observations with you, and I'm sure you will follow it up. It was not a question, so to say, but I made some observations which has already been taken care of. So I yield the floor.
Thank you. Let me take a bow. Please respond to the questions.
Sir, the question you asked, one thing I believe that I cannot stay here and tell you the depth of the rot in the refineries. But I believe that, and one man, there always what things get done. And if given the opportunity, I'll go to the root. And if it is something, I think there'll be opportunity to present myself before the Senate to make a presentation on the way forward for our refineries. Because I believe that if the refineries, the best thing we can do, let me be honest with you, the best thing we can do as a nation is to have refineries. Whether we like it or not, our refineries must work. Because the amount of products imported into this country impacts on our foreign exchange. And thereabout impacting on our foreign reserve. And the best thing for us to do is that, how do we get these refineries to work? Today in Nigeria, you find out that they'll tell you that Julius Berger is the best company, but when you get to Julius Berger, you see only one white man, and then the rest are blacks. So why? It is the willpower. We must get to have the willpower as a nation to drive this country and move forward. And we believe that it's our own country. We put in everything to make sure that if there are people that do not want the refinery to work, we show them the way out and get the people that will make the refineries to work so that Nigeria can have a breathing space. That's the best way to do. But for me, the refineries must work. Because if they don't work, I can tell you in the next 10 years, there will be no money to be spent on capital projects.
5 more minutes, please. 5 more minutes.
Distinguished colleagues, I will take the next round of questions, and that will be the last, because we have an agreement on the timing. So the Chief Whip has given us only 5 minutes left. Senator James Manager and Senator Abdul Fattah Buhari and Senator Yusuf And that will be all.
Thank you, Mr. President, seated as chair. My highly respected colleagues, Mr. Nominee, Dr. Uchechukwu Ogah, OON. Congratulations. Just one question for you. Recently, precisely on the 7th of July, Mr. President, in near me, Niger Republic, signed the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And so many people have described the signing of Mr. President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria of that agreement as a boost to the pact. Do you see it as a boost to Nigeria? Or do you see it as a boost to other African countries? Or do you see it as a boost to the whole of Africa? Your reaction, please. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Abdul Fattah Buhari.
Mr. President, distinguished colleague, Dr. Chukwu, I join my colleague to congratulate you. My question is, in 1966, when the economy of Southeast was doing very well, from your CV, you were 3 years old at that time. He was born 1969. It doesn't matter. He read it. That's not the issue. That's not the issue. You read it. The indexes today. I'm protected. I'm protected. Today, if you find yourself in the Ministry of Industry, again, what are the things you think you can do to help us, the country, about the developmental you mentioned, so that the economy can be on track for us to be able to employ our youth that are roaming the street? Thank you.
Senator Yusuf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, distinguished colleagues. I have two quick questions for you. One question is from the way you answered the other question. You said it will be an expansionary policy of government that will reduce unemployment by spending a lot of money on infrastructure. I want to know, how would you advise government to fund this infrastructure? Number two, can I come again?
The mic is on.
It's on. Can I come again? I said, you said the way to reduce unemployment in Nigeria is to build more infrastructure. Right?
Yes. Yes. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Mr. President. Mr. Chairman. Oh. All right. 56.9, yes. I'm trying to get it. I'm not with it. Order 9. 56.9. 56.9. When a senator is speaking, no senator may converse aloud or make any noise or disturb to interrupt him. During
distinguished colleagues, we should listen to our colleague who is asking the questions. Chief Whip, your point of order is fully sustained.
My question is, the way to reduce unemployment in this country is to go into expansionary policy of government by increasing or building more infrastructure. Now I want to know, how would you advise government to fund the expansion of this infrastructure? That's question number one. Question number two, there's this sticking issue of subsidy in this country, subsidy on fuel. You are an expert in banking, you are an expert in oil. Can we go ahead to subsidize as we are doing today, or we should stop the subsidy? And if we will stop the subsidy, what alternative do we have? Thank you very much.
Please.
Yes, on the 7th of this month, the President signed the African Free Trade Agreement. For me, that agreement is not only for Nigeria, it is not only for Africa, it's for the entire world. Because it has a monumental benefit. Because what it means is that when free trade zones are created, and most of the African countries or cities are industrialized, our goods can be exported. We have a common market, and there will be creation of jobs everywhere. So I think it's a good thing in good direction. And like what I said before, I said if you look at, sir? If you look at what I said that by 1966, there are 3 basic things they did. One is industrialization. 2 is agriculture. And the third one is commitment of the people. 1, I believe that if we are committed to it, this nation will go places. Agriculture, this government has involved in a policy of ensuring that all the entire nation increases in agricultural sector. And I believe that even goods that are produced here can be exported, and that making us to earn revenue, which will help to increase our foreign reserve. 3 is that the industrialization, which cannot only be dependent on government. You see, the problem we have is that most times we depend on government for this creation of jobs. It is not the responsibility of government to create jobs. It is the responsibility of the government to create an enabling environment so that the private sector can come in and invest into the nation. Thereby creating jobs.
The time is up. You asked me to keep to time. I'm disciplined.
Chief Whip, the gavel is here. Allow me to do that job. You only remind us how many minutes we have left. But, so leave the time up to me. Nominee, please round up. Round up.
I want to use this opportunity to appreciate the President of the Senate, the entire senators here present, for the opportunity given to me to serve this great nation. And I promise that I believe for me to be nominated shows a great sign. And I believe that I can trust myself that promising this great chamber that I will do myself in the interest of this nation to protect whatever that is given, whatever portfolio that is given to me, and I will excel and make all of you here proud. Thank you.
Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. Hold on. Hold on, please wait. Distinguished colleagues, is it the opinion of the Senate that this nominee, who has responded to almost 20 questions, take a bow? You can take a bow. Cut.
You're watching Channels Television's live broadcast of